Hey guys, it's competition time. How would you like to be interviewed on the Game Changers Experience podcast as a top thought leader and industry game changer? Well, you can. I'm offering one lucky spot to one lucky listener who'd like to come up onto the show. Now, the great thing about this show is that it's in the top 2.5% global rankings. We're in 43 different countries and we have thousands of downloads from around the world. So if you want to get your message out there in the big wide world, this is a great opportunity to do so. Now, there's a couple of things that you've got to do. Number one is you've got to leave a 5-star review on Apple or on Spotify. And then send me a screenshot or tag me. You can send me a screenshot to hello@adamstrong.net. It's hello@adamstrong.net. And also buy me a coffee. The link is below. Buy me a coffee. Buy me a coffee based on the value that you get from the show personally. And then we'll be reviewing applicants over the next couple of weeks. And I'll be making an announcement on June 15th on the lucky winner. So listen, good luck and we'll see you soon. Take care.
This is the Game Changers Experience. Deep dive conversations with leading business disruptors, Olympic athletes, celebrities, entrepreneurs, and influencers from around the world. This show will teach you insights about the winning principles in mindset, productivity, marketing, branding, entrepreneurship, business strategy, and more. Hosted by productivity authority, business strategist, former elite athlete, author, and public speaker, Adam Strong.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Game Changers Experience with myself, Adam Strong. And today we have another great show lined up. And today I'm with Mike Maddock. Now, Mike is a serial entrepreneur. He's a best-selling author, and he's a global keynote speaker and a growth strategy coach. Mike has written 4 best-selling books, wow, about growth and innovation, and he writes for Bloomberg and Forbes magazine. And honestly, some of the things that we've been talking about offline are absolutely immense, got a huge amounts of experience. And today what we're going to be talking about is blind spots. Interesting, great topic, love it, especially from a leadership perspective. So we're going to be talking a little bit about what is a blind spot, what do you need to look for, what are the consequences of if we don't deal with those blind spots, right? We're going to also talk about advisory boards. We're going to be talking about Napster movements. By the way, when I saw that, I was like, holy moly, what the hell is that? Anyway, getting long story short, Mike, welcome to the show.
Adam, great to be with you. Thank you.
Welcome. Good stuff. Well, listen, I was going to say, I want to jump into this really quickly because I know that we've got some great energy, and you know, I'm really big into energy and things like that. But I'd love to talk. I mean, you worked with a variety of different companies, corporate companies, Fortune 100 companies. But just give us a little bit of a backstory about how you got into and what you did.
Yeah, so I'm an entrepreneur. I've had businesses since I was a teenager. And more importantly, I was blessed to work with all kinds of entrepreneurs. As I was trying to run my own little companies, I always had another job with 2 or 3 or 4. And what that taught me was that the difference between someone that is an entrepreneur and someone that isn't an entrepreneur is the first person had the stone to actually try to start their own business. Entrepreneurs aren't perfect. When the close sign goes up on the door, there's yelling, there's screaming, there's crying, there are mistakes. And so that was a really great lesson as a kid for me to see, because it gave me the courage to try on my own. So I started a business right out of college, which was a design firm. Our tagline should have been, sure, we can do that too, because we took any project we could get. And we woke up 15 years later and we're the second largest privately held marketing communications firm in the Chicago area of the States. And then I had a Jerry Maguire moment where I decided that advertising and marketing was the tax you pay for a bad idea, which is to say that what we noticed was when someone brought us a product that people actually needed, it was easy to market. And with the emergence of social media, we presumed that would become that would become even more true. So we decided I came in front of the company and said, okay, here's what we're going to be when we grow up. We're going to be an innovation consulting firm. And, that was like a fart in church for about half the company. They were just like, that doesn't sound really great. So we started another company with some of our original employees that's called MacGuffin Creative Group. in Chicago. That's a marketing communications firm that's focused on financial services and healthcare. And Maddock Douglas said, we are going to be about innovation. And from that, we have worked with 25% of the Fortune 100. And I get to be in rooms with really, really clever people that are trying to put a dent in the universe vis-a-vis a new product or service.
Love it, love it, love it, love it. And also, interestingly enough, you're also a big fan of Lego. Tell us about that.
Well, I played with Legos as a kid. I at some point there's a my picture that they used in Forbes and now on Inc. magazine is me playing with Legos. I just always loved building stuff. And then when we became a dad, I learned to hate Legos because I would step on them at 3 a.m. walking to my bedroom. So I have a love-hate relationship with Legos, as many of us do.
I love Lego. I mean, I love Lego when I was a kid. I still love Lego. I just don't get to play it probably as much as I should do, right? Anyway, there's always a kid in everyone.
That's right. Absolutely.
That's true. Lovely. Cool. All right, let's get into this. So let's talk a little bit about blind spots, because that's what the topic of today is. And let's talk about, first of all, what is a blind spot? Just to perspective in there, put it out there. What from your perspective, what's a blind spot?
Well, so it's one of my favorite sayings is you can't read the label when you're sitting inside the jar. And what that means is the longer you've been working on a project in an industry, a relationship, the more of an expert you become. Congratulations, you're an expert. That means you know what works, what doesn't work, why the boss got fired, what you can afford, what's legal, what's illegal. And that expertise gets you a lot of promotions, but it also keeps you from seeing possibility when it's walking right in front of you. A blind spot is an expertise trap.
Interesting. Is it the same analogy of if you're kind of like working in the trenches and you're trying to get clarity in a way? Would you say that is also a blind spot?
That reminds me of marketing myopia, which is that was coined by a Harvard professor in 1967. And what happens there in the trenches is you forget the business that you're in.
Got it.
You forget the business that you have the right to be in. For example, every railroad baron thought they were in the railroad business because they thought about rails and building cars and steel, et cetera. If they had realized they were in the transportation business, they would today own every plane, every ship, every rail car, but they didn't. That's a related challenge. Because that's a blind spot, because you're thinking about what you do every day and you forget the benefits you're bringing to your customer, or you could bring to your customer.
It's a good point. Love that. Very cool. Let's what was I going to say, in terms of like the symptoms of blind spots, what are some of the symptoms would you say from your perspective that we need to look for as leaders and as entrepreneurs in terms of blind spots? Any thoughts?
Okay, so there are at least 3 symptoms. One of my favorite is that I already mentioned one, you're an expert. I promise you, if you are considered an expert in your industry, you have developed blind spots. It's the other side of the expertise coin.
Everyone's an expert though. Everyone's an expert, Mike. What are you talking about? That's why all our listeners are here. They're all experts.
I do not agree with you. I'm sorry, respectfully. And the one of my favorite symptoms is that, and I by the way, I own these symptoms. I'm working on myself here. But if you've noticed, you keep trying to solve the same problem over and over and over again, but you can't seem to solve it, chances are you're working on the wrong problem. That's a tenet of design thinking. And that's what happens with experts. They know how something should be done. So they're convinced they know what the problem is. So they punish that problem and they can't solve it. That's a symptom that there's an expertise trap. There's a blind spot. The other symptom is you get pissed off about ideas. If you can't let go for a better grip, and if someone comes to you and has an idea and it makes you angry, that passion is a pretty good indication of how committed you are to something. And that commitment that's being violated by that idea is a blind spot.
Interesting. And also what you were saying before, right? The whole kind of analogy of, trying to solve a problem. It's a bit like kind of what Einstein said, the definition of insanity is just doing the same thing over and over again, but expecting a different result. It's kind of the same analogy, isn't it?
Yeah. And I love, just as a build on that, Einstein had another quote that one should not expect to solve a problem with the same level of expertise that created it. And so, when an industry, a group of experts has created a problem,
Yep.
they're usually not the ones that solve it. And here's one other thing that is, we just did a very, very large research study. We spent about $500,000 on it. And we made 9 bold predictions about the future of advice, expert advice.
Mhm.
And one of the big ahas, we used a prediction market, which is useful because it's the wisdom of the crowd. We did 2. We did one with professional advisors and one with people that bought advice. And one of the things that we noticed was that boomers, Gen X, thought one thing was going to happen, and millennials thought something else. They predicted different futures. The challenge is that in most industries, they're run by boomers or Gen X right now. And here come the millennials who see the world so completely different. So if your board, your advisory board, your board of directors, your C-suite is full of boomers and Gen X, they're experts. And their expertise is completely blind to what the millennials want or they're about to do. That's really dangerous. And it's impacting a lot of businesses. And that's how Napster moments happen.
That's really interesting because, there's one thing that I was speaking about this a couple of weeks ago, actually, with regards to how companies have struggled to attract top talent, right? So what you're saying, okay, so here's an analogy. I suppose it's analogy is company X is struggling to attract top talent. But what you're saying is if they don't have these younger generation people in senior positions, right, it's going to hurt them because it's going to create the blind spot. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think that it's just to be the not only that, but just to be aware that the loudest voice in the room, the most successful, fill in the blank, insurance agent, real estate agent, doctor, who is at the top of their game, what got them here won't get you there because their go-to punch and their expertise was refined with a different generation. And the rules that the earth has shifted underneath them, but they've always made more money. Their name is on the side of the building. And so people listen to them until they're wrong. Usually it's too late for that company or organization. The CEO of Sony, when talking about Napster, said that he didn't think they were a mosquito worthy of swatting on the Howard Stern show. And then he said, I wish we had just bought them, but he didn't see it. And this is while 87% of his record stores were going out of business. And a Napster moment, just to be clear, is when someone with no business being in your business comes along and puts you out of business. That was a 16-year-old kid who was trying to solve a problem, wasn't trying to hurt anybody, and he blindsided a whole industry.
That's interesting. I mean, there's actually, I'm just thinking about some other examples. I mean, you've used Napster, which was a real big shift in how kind of Apple and kind of the iPod had kind of, that it was kind of that arena there in the 90s. But I guess there's also a shift in things like Netflix, for example, and Blockbuster Video going out and things like that. Would you agree?
Yeah, so the name just came to me. Theodore Levitt was the Harvard professor that came up with marketing myopia. And the difference between Blockbuster and Netflix is that Blockbuster thought it was in the videotape business.
Right.
And I met a young lady who brought a business case to the CEO of Blockbuster saying, we are in trouble. Here's what we need to do. And was told, you don't understand what business we're in. We're in a retail brick and mortar business. Meanwhile, Netflix understood they were in the entertainment business. And when you're in the entertainment business, it doesn't matter if it's a videotape or a song or a movie, that's what kept them out of jail. They weren't myopic. They weren't so myopic about their business we're in. So, here's a challenging question. what business is Apple in? What business is Google in? What you notice is the businesses that are open and less myopic, it's really hard to pin down what business they're in, because they're the way they define their opportunity to serve their customers in the world is much broader.
Yep, that makes sense. So, okay, interestingly enough, so we're talking about, even if we look at kind of competitors that maybe have, either don't exist anymore, whether it be an airline or whatever it is, would you say because they didn't shift to the market or they didn't adapt to that business model, would you say that's also a good example of a blind spot?
Yeah, I think it just gets to fundamental ways to keep it from happening. You mentioned millennials. I think diversity of thinking is at the core of what keeps you out of trouble. And so having, every leader should have a coach, a forum, and an operating system, and that forum, whether it's an advisory board, a board of directors, or a growth forum, needs to be made up of a diverse group of thinkers with different attitudes, different backgrounds, different skills, who are peers.
Yep.
So that when they tell you you're full of crap, or better, when they say, hey man, I don't see the problem that you're trying to fix the same way, I see it as a different problem to solve,
yep,
you will actually listen and learn from them.
Love it, love it, love it. Interestingly enough, because when we talk about advisory, because what you were talking about is advisory boards. And it's interesting, I was actually having a really interesting conversation with a friend of mine based in Utah, and she works with she's actually written a book about advisory boards. I'm like, I didn't know about that. This is kind of interesting. But what's, from your perspective, how do you, especially with regards to businesses and startups, and doesn't matter which industry you're in or whatever it is, but when it comes to advisory boards, what's the benefits and how do we build one?
So it's really hard to build an advisory board. I've done it. Who should I recruit? How much do I pay them? How often do we get together? What problem is too big or too small?
Right.
And it's expensive, time consuming, and it's difficult. And more than that, the worst thing, from my own personal experience, the worst thing about advisory boards is we tend to put people we like on them. And it's the people that, so consequently, they tend to think like us and react like us. And that's the worst kind of advisory board, because you get a bunch of people telling you what you want to hear, and they will tell you that right into the ground. You put and this is from my own personal experience.
Right.
I think a forum should consist of peers. And with Flourish Forums, which is a company that I started about 1.5 years ago, not only are you peers, but you sit in one of 6 seats. You're the operator, the strategist, the rainmaker, the visionary, the tech futurist, or the orchestrator. So all those people have P&L responsibility, they're peers, but under pressure or in flow, they see the world differently. And so they'll see your challenges differently.
Very cool. Very cool. Is there any, are there any past clients or senior leaders that you worked with in the past where they've come to you specifically because they feel like there's, whether it be a disconnect or a blind spot or whatever it is, if so, and they come to you because they needed advice, they needed to become more what I call aware, right? Aware of how to become more aware of what a blind spot looks like. But more importantly, like, what was the story behind the back of that? Was there anyone that comes to mind at all? When because obviously you do a lot of stuff in growth transformation and things like that. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think so. In that construct, I would sit squarely in the visionary seat, which is to say that under pressure, I tend to start over, blow stuff up, challenge convention, see the world completely differently. which is really great. It's a really great skill when a company needs to pivot. It's a really bad skill when you're scaling and everything's fine.
Right.
Because visionaries tend to want to blow things up even when things are going great. In fact, if things are going really great, they want to start over. If things are going really bad, they want to start over. We just want to always do something differently. So it's a strength and a weakness. So when CEOs have come to me, what's happened is typically their go-to punch is not working. They've squeezed all the profit. The KPIs are right, but the results are different. And they're trying to see the world differently. And so I know how to do that. A couple of strategies that I would give to your listeners to do it. If you get together with your team and say, okay, team, I'm going to whiteboard this out. What are the 10 things or the 5 things that we do better than anyone else in our industry? And just write them down. Don't use industry terms. And then go and take that list and Google those words. What you're going to do is you're going to find out that there are, 3 pages worth of companies who are not competitors that think they're in the same business you're in. So all of a sudden you're not myopic because you can say, oh my God, that company is not a competitor, but they say they do what we do. And in every one of those companies, there are smart people with titles like Chief Technology, Chief Innovation, Chief Strategy Officer. And those people like beer and pizza, and they like wine and coffee. And when you call them and say, hey, Chief Technology Officer, you're doing some really cool stuff. Can I buy you beer, pizza, wine, or coffee? Because I want to learn from you. They say yes. And when you get together with those people, they will share with you how they are solving the same problems you are in a non-competitive way. And that allows you to parallel engineer ideas. You can start going, oh my gosh, we can move horizontally with this technology or this service because they think they're in the same business we're in. So there's one way to get outside that jar if you're trying to shift a little bit.
Love it, love it, love it. Very cool. Interestingly enough, we're going through some interesting times in the world. We won't go into too deep, but we're all going through interesting times. I'm sure you guys would agree with me on that. But from your perspective, Mike, if there is a shift in the market, whether it be a shift in the marketplace, shift in the industry that they're working in right now, what is the best advice that you have for people where if they have these worries and they're not sure about how to deal with the blind spots and, they're worried about, well, it's kind of like they're being pessimistic. I know you've got to be optimistic, but it's kind of this pessimistic kind of mindset. What's your thoughts on that?
So, I've written 4 books about innovation and entrepreneurship. So I'm going to go 30,000 feet, but if you're interested to go deeper, there are white papers, books, etc. I think a portfolio, 2 things. Number one, be aware of what your company, what your leadership team's go-to punch is. Some companies are great operators. And so what they do is under pressure, they tend to squeeze, they cut costs, they get to the core. And if there's room in your industry to do that, that's really beneficial. But if you're already running a really lean ship, your reaction will not be to pivot or invent something else. On the flip side, there are people like me that just want to blow everything up when things are going really well. So first, be aware of what your go-to punch is from your leadership team. And then second, I think a portfolio strategy is really smart. So, there's a simple 2x2. I've written about it. If anybody sends me a note, I'll send it to them. But, on the y-axis, it's, we know how to do it or we don't know how to do it. On the x-axis is we know our customers will buy it or we don't know they're going to buy it. So bottom left, we know how to do it. We know they'll buy it. That's evolutionary innovation. That's what operators do. Everybody should be doing it. Listen to your customers, give them what they want. There's very little margin in it. So you're not going to make a big dent in the universe just doing that. Top left, we don't know how to do it, but our customers are asking for it. That's differentiation. There's more margin. You got to figure out how to do that. Bottom right, we have an idea, but we're not sure if anybody's going to buy it. That's what entrepreneurs do. Let's fast fail. And top right is, we don't know if anybody wants it. We don't know how to do it, but man, is this a cool idea? That's revolutionary idea, innovation. And what you want to do is you want to be really intentional about the projects you're working on, and you want a balanced portfolio. Like 80% should be bottom left, 10% top left, 5% top right, and whatever's left, bottom right. And when you can do that, you're going to be hitting, mixing metaphors now, sorry. You're going to be hitting singles, doubles, and maybe a triple once in a while, but you're not going to screw up your world by investing everything in that top right quadrant. You're probably going to be wrong. You're probably going to go out of business if you do that.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. So here's another thought, and I just kind of had an epiphany moment, I suppose. But what would you say the real difference between making mistakes or the fear of making mistakes and a blind spot, and how to deal with those?
Yeah, I haven't thought about that. I have, let me think, the fear of making mistakes in a blind spot. So I'm a big fan of Colby, which is what I use to place C-suite people in the chairs in Flourish Forum.
Yep.
And Colby, are you familiar with Colby, Adam? Colby
I'm
score?
not. Please let me know. Please, what is that?
So it measures 4 different things: fact finding, follow through, quick start, and implementer.
Okay.
And based on the pattern of your score, I can tell you which seat you feel strongest in. You all of us can be in any of those seats, but there are a couple of seats that we really do well in.
Got it.
My experience is that if you have a really high fact finder score and a really high follow through score, you're going to be a great operator, which is awesome because you're about detail, you're about systems, etc. But it also means you get into analysis paralysis and you're very slow to make changes.
Yep.
The visionary score is a really high quick start score and everything else is kind of low, which means that you're really quick to experiment. And what entrepreneurs have, the one advantage that entrepreneurs have over everyone else is they typically make 25 mistakes before a big company is ready to make one. And so FAIL to me is an acronym for first attempt in learning. And I think failing really, really fast with low cost is a skill that companies need, whether it's in a department, in that quick start department,
yep,
or whether it's partnering with entrepreneurs who can just go bam, 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 because it reveals blind spots.
Yep.
Like, shit, I did not see that coming.
Absolutely.
Wow, that's because you had a blind spot. Well, but it didn't cost me anything. I'd learned something. Let's keep going. I'm not sure if that's the answer to your question.
No, absolutely. I think that's a great analogy. I thought that was an excellent analogy. I did think that was really, really good. I enjoyed that. Thank you very much. Gives me some great clarity. Interestingly enough, and okay, so here's the thought. It's a really good question from my perspective, because I feel like, especially with some of our listeners, and we all get complacent, ladies and gentlemen, right? We get complacent when things are going good. We get comfortable in our comfort zone. And sometimes it's like, well, why would I change things if they're going well, right? So here's an interesting perspective, I suppose, and a good question for you, Mike, is how, when it comes to when things are all going gravy, right? When things are going gravy and we fall into this behavior of complacency, how does that relate to blind spots, number one, right? But also, how do you deal with complacency and complacent companies and business owners? What's your thoughts on that?
So one of the things I've been in a forum for over 25 years now, another one for 15 years. And one of the things that I noticed is that if you graft out the roller coaster ride that is a business journey,
right,
what you'll see is no one is ever at the top or the bottom forever. It is absolutely like things are great, things are great, things are great. Oh my God, things are bad. Yeah. And it's just up and down and up and down. So one should never feel bad when things are going really poorly or really great, because wait a couple years and you'll be on the other side of that ride. So surrounding yourself with that perspective, like, oh my God, that guy or that woman was absolutely crushing it 2 years ago. And then her marriage fell apart, or her kid got in trouble, or there was a scandal in her company and now they're just getting crushed. That's number one, having the perspective that that things change pretty quickly. Yep. Number two, having a group of people that are willing to challenge you when things are going really well. You know, the time to invest in innovation is when things are going really well. It's really, really hard to get a boat across the ocean without wind. It's really easy when the winds are blowing in your sails. You know, you can go anywhere you want, but when the wind stops, you can't move. Everyone's afraid. No one wants to take any chances. Everyone's afraid about losing their job. And those all those things conspire to keep you from trying new things. So having a group that'll say, dude, you're doing great. What are you going to do next? And show me your portfolio of risk is number two. So I'll stop there. But those are two things that I would recommend that every leader has. And you can't have enough of that. You can't have enough. We all know people that have blown fortunes because they convinced themselves that they were Midas. You know, like everything I touch turns to gold. Just look at my past. They have an exit and all that money's gone in 2 years because they didn't have a group of people going, yeah, you've been, there's a little luck involved, dude. Your head's getting a little big.
Yeah. Ego, absolutely. 100% ego. Definitely. No, this is very cool. Well, listen, I know that we're coming towards the end of our conversations, but I'd love to know what you're working on right now. And maybe you could share with our listeners if you'll be willing to do so.
Yeah, so I have been fascinated by forums. And so I have created a company called Flourish Forums, plural, www.flourishforums.com. And I'm constructing like hyper curated virtual advisory boards for leaders.
That's cool.
We meet every month for an hour, we meet 10 months out of the year. And I get to be in the middle of these forums moderating really clever people, helping each other scale their businesses. I'm still the CEO of Maddock Douglas. I'm still involved with McGuffin, but I started this conversation saying I'm a really good starter and I'm a lousy finisher. I like starting things, and I'm really enjoying starting Flourish Forums. It's been really, invigorating for the members and for me. And I'm writing another book, and I'm doing a fair amount of public speaking, and I get to talk to really clever people like you, Adam.
That's cool. Listen, flattery gets you everywhere in life.
Absolutely.
Well, listen, guys, hope that you've enjoyed some of our conversations with me and Mike. Was going to say, if you want to get in touch with Mike, please do click on the links and you can connect with him on the links below. Do mention the podcast. That way he can put 2 and 2 together. Mike, I just want to say thanks very much for being on today's show.
Adam, it was an honor. It really was. Thank you.
Awesome. Great. Listen, I hope you enjoyed today's episode, guys. Make sure, by the way, if you have got some value from today's episode, right, there is a list of instructions on the list below. So if you haven't already done so, we are going to be running some competition soon, by the way. Please do leave a review and buy me a coffee, right? We got this thing called Buy Me a Coffee. I'm actually more of a tea drinker, but you can buy me a coffee anyway. Click on the link below. You'll know what I mean. So I hope you got some great value. And what we're going to be looking to do, we've got some great, amazing things that's going to be happening, which I'm going to be telling you about really, really soon, but I'm not going to tell you right now. So anyway, listen, from me and Mike, have a great day, week, month, afternoon, evening, whatever it is in the world. And we'll see you again on the next Game Changers Experience. Take care, everyone, and we'll see you soon. Cheers now. Hey guys, I just want to say thank you so much for listening to today's episode on the Game Changers Experience. I would be gratefully appreciated if you could leave a good or a bad review. It doesn't matter, 1 or a 5-star review, whichever you prefer, on any of the platforms, whether it be on Apple, whether it be on Spotify, Podchaser, etc. And please leave a testimonial or review about our podcast. And if you have enjoyed our podcast, then I look forward to seeing you on the next Game Changers Experience. Take care, see you soon, etc. And please leave a testimonial or review about our podcast. And if you have enjoyed our podcast, then I look forward to seeing you on the next Game Changers Experience. Take care, see you soon.